These small purple berries were completely banned in America for nearly a century, turning what was once a beloved homegrown fruit into contraband that could land you in serious legal trouble. The blackcurrant, a tiny powerhouse packed with more vitamin C than oranges and with more antioxidants than blueberries, became the target of the most extensive agricultural eradication program in American history. Back in 1629, English settlers brought blackcurrant bushes to the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and by the late 1800s, these hardy shrubs had found their perfect home. Nearly 7,400 acres across America were devoted to growing blackcurrants, with New York alone producing 3.3 million quarts out of the nation's total 7.6 million quarts each year. Families treasured these berries in their jams, pies, and homemade cordials. The future looked bright for America's blackcurrant industry. Then, disaster struck in the form of a microscopic enemy that would change everything. White pine blister rust, caused by the fungus Cronardium ribicola, arrived in America through infected pine seedlings imported from Europe in the early 1900s. This was not just any plant disease, it was an ecological nightmare with a complex life cycle that required two hosts to survive: white pine trees and plants in the ribes family, which included blackcurrants and gooseberries. The fungus would infect blackcurrant leaves, reproduce, then send its spores flying to nearby white pine trees, where it would burrow into the bark and slowly kill these majestic giants from the inside out. White pines were not just any trees. They were keystone species in many ecosystems and represented millions of dollars in timber value. As the disease spread, it became clear that America's forestry industry faced an existential threat. The government's response was swift and merciless. In 1911, the federal government enacted a complete ban on the cultivation, sale, and transport of blackcurrants and related ribes plants. The Plant Quarantine Act of 1912 reinforced these restrictions with the full force of federal law. What had been a thriving agricultural crop suddenly became contraband overnight. But banning new plantings was not enough. The government launched what would become one of the most extensive eradication campaigns in agricultural history. Starting in the 1920s, the USDA poured $400,000 annually, which is equivalent to millions in today's dollars, into a massive search and destroy mission. Every summer, as soon as blackcurrant plants leafed out enough to be identified, thousands of teachers and college students were hired to canvass America's forests, pulling ribes plants up by their roots or dousing them with a deadly mixture of salt and borax. At its peak, this eradication effort employed over 8,600 workers. The Civilian Conservation Corps, that famous Depression-era program that put unemployed young men to work in America's forests, dedicated significant resources to hunting down and destroying blackcurrant bushes. For nearly 3 decades, teams of workers scoured over 20 million acres of American landscape, systematically eliminating every blackcurrant plant they could find. The numbers are staggering. By the time the eradication program ended in 1959, it had cost just north of $100 million. That's roughly $1 billion in today's purchasing power. An entire generation of Americans grew up never having tasted a blackcurrant, and the knowledge of how to grow and use these berries began to fade from collective memory. Meanwhile, the rest of the world kept planting blackcurrants. In fact, they embraced them more than ever. During World War II, when German submarines made importing oranges nearly impossible, the British government actively encouraged blackcurrant cultivation as a vital source of vitamin C. They launched the Vitamin Welfare Scheme in 1941, providing free blackcurrant syrup to children under 2 and expectant mothers. Nearly all of Britain's blackcurrant crop went to producing Ribena, the purple drink that became a national staple. The irony is profound. While Americans were spending millions to eradicate a superfruit, Europeans were celebrating it as essential nutrition. By 2020, the rest of the world had over 100,000 acres dedicated to blackcurrant production, with Europe producing 99.1% of the global crop. The purple Skittles candy tells the whole story. In America, it tastes like grape. But in the UK and Australia, it is blackcurrant flavored, because that is the purple fruit everyone there actually knows and loves. As decades passed, scientific understanding evolved. Researchers discovered that blackcurrants and white pines could safely coexist with proper management and adequate buffer zones. The 5 needle pine species most affected by blister rust were not even native to most of Europe, which explained why Europeans had never needed to ban the fruit. By the 1960s, these findings led to the lifting of the federal ban in 1966, transferring control to individual states. But lifting a ban and rebuilding an industry are two completely different challenges. By this point, as Cornell University researcher Marvin Pritz noted, probably less than 0.1% of Americans had ever eaten a blackcurrant. The 1925 edition of the Small Fruits of New York described their taste as having a stinking and somewhat loathing savor, hardly an endorsement to inspire a culinary comeback. Enter Greg Quinn, a man who would become the unlikely champion of America's blackcurrant renaissance. In 1999, Quinn and his fiancée, Carolyn Blackwood, purchased an old dairy farm in New York's Hudson Valley with no prior farming experience. Quinn had spent 20 years teaching at the New York Botanical Garden, and he remembered the beautiful blackcurrant plants that grew behind a restaurant where he had once worked in Bavaria, Germany. That was when a little bulb went off, Quinn recalled. Here was a crop that had been forgotten in America, but was thriving everywhere else in the world. Not only would it be unique, but what a great story it would make. Quinn threw himself into research with scientific precision. He visited 14 different countries where currants were grown, including Poland, the world's second-largest producer. He partnered with Cornell University to confirm that blackcurrants could indeed be grown safely in New York with proper precautions. Armed with this knowledge, Quinn set out to change the law. His lobbying campaign was part persistence, part charm offensive. He said he would bring a box of danishes and give them to the law clerks and the secretaries, and ask them to sneak him in if there was a cancellation, Quinn explained. After months of weekly visits to Albany in 2002, he caught the attention of a Wall Street Journal reporter who wrote about the nutty currant guy. The story captured imaginations, and Quinn got a call from the late New York State Senator William Larkin, who sat on the Agricultural Committee. In April 2003, the New York legislature unanimously voted to lift the ban on commercial currant cultivation. Governor George Pataki signed the bill into law that September. In 2004, Quinn launched Currant C as the first legal commercial blackcurrant farm in New York in nearly a century. The timing could not have been better. Health-conscious consumers were beginning to discover what the rest of the world had always known: blackcurrants are nutritional powerhouses. The numbers are remarkable. Blackcurrants contain 4 times more vitamin C than oranges, and twice the antioxidants of blueberries. A 100-gram serving provides 218% of the daily recommended vitamin C, along with significant amounts of iron and manganese. Quinn called them a little powerhouse berry, and noted they also have more potassium than bananas, plus calcium, iron, manganese, and magnesium. This nutritional profile arrived at the perfect moment. The first 2 decades of the 21st century saw an explosion in superfood trends and functional nutrition. Suddenly, American consumers were actively seeking out foods that could boost immunity and provide concentrated nutrition. Blackcurrants fit this demand perfectly. Other pioneering farmers began to take notice. Kurt Rhodes in Penn Yan, New York, received a $10,000 grant from the New York Farm Viability Institute in 2006 to plant a 1-acre field trial. Blue Fruit Farm in Minnesota started growing blackcurrants in 2010. By 2019, commercial blackcurrant cultivation had spread to the Pacific Northwest and throughout the Northeast. The economic potential became increasingly clear. The global blackcurrant powder market was valued at $2.08 billion in 2024 and is projected to reach $3.92 billion by 2032. The United States blackcurrant oil market alone reached $86.4 million in 2024, with projections to hit $128.5 million by 2030. North America now dominates the blackcurrant powder market with a 36.14% revenue share. Quinn's Farm became a pilgrimage site for immigrants who remembered blackcurrants from their home countries. Quinn observed that every year Poles come up here swooning over the fruit. After they pick the berries, they sit by the pond, eat the fresh currants, and drink vodka. These visitors represented living connections to the culinary traditions that America had lost during the ban. The story took on new dimensions during the economic recession of 2008, when Quinn had to adapt his business model and shift toward e-commerce. This pivot actually helped expand the market, allowing curious consumers across the country to taste blackcurrants for the first time. The internet became a powerful tool for education, spreading the remarkable story of America's forbidden fruit. Today, the blackcurrant renaissance continues to gain momentum. Canopy Farm began planting currants in Sauk City, Wisconsin, completing its first 100 acres and planning expansion. New York, Vermont, Connecticut, California, and Oregon have all seen renewed cultivation. From a federal perspective, it is now perfectly legal to grow, sell, and transport blackcurrants and their products across the United States. However, the patchwork of state regulations remains complex. Some states like Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, and North Carolina continue to prohibit growing certain rib species due to lingering concerns about white pine blister rust. This creates a confusing regulatory landscape where a fruit can be perfectly legal in one state and completely banned just across the border. The scientific consensus has largely vindicated Quinn's position. Modern research confirms that blackcurrants and white pines can coexist safely with proper management. Disease-resistant cultivars developed in the 1970s with names like Crusader, Coronet, and Consort have reduced any potential risks. Meanwhile, the economic importance of white pine lumber has dramatically decreased, as Quinn noted. White pines are certainly not the favored trees they once were. They are not used as Christmas trees or grown for lumber any longer. The blackcurrant story reveals something profound about how fear and incomplete understanding can shape policy for generations. A threat that seemed existential in 1911 led to a century-long ban that eliminated not just plants but knowledge, culinary traditions, and economic opportunities. As Quinn told Business Insider, this may be the last product that everybody knows about except the United States. The revival of blackcurrant cultivation represents more than just agricultural diversification. It is a reclamation of lost food heritage. Each new farm, each curious consumer trying blackcurrants for the first time, each jar of jam or bottle of cordial represents a thread being rewoven into America's culinary fabric. Looking forward, the trajectory seems clear. Rising health consciousness, growing interest in functional foods, and increasing agricultural diversification all point toward continued expansion of blackcurrant cultivation. The global market growth projections suggest enormous untapped potential in American markets. Yet challenges remain. Most Americans still have no idea what blackcurrants taste like or how to use them. Building consumer awareness and culinary knowledge will require sustained effort from farmers, chefs, and food educators. The confusing patchwork of state regulations needs simplification to enable interstate commerce and industry growth. The blackcurrant ban from 1911 to 1966 stands as one of the most extensive agricultural prohibitions in American history. What began as an emergency response to a legitimate threat evolved into an entrenched policy that persisted long after the original justification had disappeared. It took the vision and persistence of individuals like Greg Quinn to challenge assumptions, navigate bureaucracy, and rebuild an industry from scratch. Today, as Quinn tends his 50 remaining acres of blackcurrants, selling to local cideries, wineries, and small food businesses, he represents something larger than just a successful farmer. He embodies the power of questioning inherited wisdom, of looking beyond borders for solutions, and of persisting in the face of seemingly impossible bureaucratic obstacles. The blackcurrant story is not finished. It is just beginning its next chapter in American agriculture. After a century in exile, this remarkable little berry is finally coming home.